Hey, thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name is Kaylee, and this is a Read Rant Review, where, you guessed it, I read books and I do rant reviews. I read a bunch of crazy books, and then I tell you all about it. I give you a beat-by-beat, chapter-by-chapter breakdown of whatever I've read recently. And today we're going to be talking about a book that has been on my TBR pretty much since it came out. Like, I know this book was super popular a couple years ago. I'm a little late. I'm a little behind on getting to it. I know, but I needed to read a good book. I've been like dying to read something decent. And so I was like, oh, like let's hit a fan fave and hope for the best. So today we're going to be talking about The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This book was published in 2020, has 448 pages, and currently on Goodreads, it's sitting at a 4.17 with a little over 1.4 million ratings, which is a lot. Like I said, this was incredibly popular at the time. I remember seeing it everywhere and being recommended constantly by people whenever I had first started this channel because it was up my alley. And honestly, it kind of was. But we'll get into the positives and the negatives as we go. But before we get too much further into the video, I do just want to give you the same 3 disclaimers that I have on all of my videos. And then I'll read you the book description so you know what we're getting into. And then we'll dive right in. So in terms of disclaimers, this video will in fact contain all of the spoilers. Like I said, beat by beat, chapter by chapter breakdown. This video is also not for the author. It's not for friends, fans, family, stans, anything of the like. My reviews are for fellow readers. And last but not least, I like to put a content or trigger warning on my videos so that you know what we're getting into. And there is not one supplied by the author in the book, which isn't that surprising. So let me go ahead and look those up really quick so I can give that to you. Okay, so this is on Storygraph. A couple of folks have tagged the content warnings. So I'm just going to read you some stuff that they have on here. So try to cover all of the bases. There is pretty graphic depictions of mental illness and thoughts of ending one's own life. A bunch of misogyny, addiction, religious bigotry, death of a parent. There's a bunch of classism and cursing and gun violence and SA and violence in general. And yeah, there's some toxic relationship stuff that goes on. And yeah, I guess really just the big ones would be like the idolizing or like ideations of ending one's own life. And then there's like some pretty graphic depictions of like SA or like assault adjacent type things in the book. Those would be the 2 that I would give you like a very clear and like, hey, seriously warning about, as well as just like general violence and a little bit of gore that gets talked about. If you want any more detailed trigger warnings beyond that, I recommend you going on to, I believe it's like Romance.io or Storygraph, or there's a couple of websites. Like if you literally just look it up in content warnings, you can get like a full breakdown of the list. But I think those are the major ones. In general though, right, my blanket statement is that like viewer discretion is advised. And if at any point you've got to hop off the video, no hard feelings, right? No hard feelings here. Protect your own peace, okay? So the book description: a life no one will remember. A story you will never forget. France, 1714. In a moment of desperation, a young woman makes a Faustian? Oh my, what is this word? I ain't never heard of this word. What is a Faustian bargain? A pact where someone trades something for immense moral or spiritual value, like their soul, for worldly gains such as knowledge, power, or riches. Oh, cool. Okay, yeah. So, well, hey, that's the whole book. Makes a Faustian bargain to live forever and is cursed to be forgotten by everyone she meets. Thus begins the extraordinary life of Addie LaRue, and a dazzling adventure that will play out across centuries and continents, across history and art, as a young woman learns how far she will go to leave her mark on the world. But everything changes when the Fire Nation attacks. No, I'm kidding. Everything changes when, after nearly 300 years, Addie stumbles across a young man in a hidden bookstore, and he remembers her name. Now, we're talking time travel. We're talking beautiful writing. Like, there is a lot about this book that appealed to me, and there's a lot about this book that I really loved. And there's a lot about the book that I was not a super big fan of. So we'll go ahead and dive right in. With it being so long, like 450 pages is like a lot longer than the books I usually cover on the channel. I'm just going to talk about it in parts. There's 7 parts of the book. And so like we'll delineate the rant doing it that way rather than like chapter by chapter, just so I don't drive myself crazy. And for anybody who has like watched my channel a bunch, we're in the new house. So we're just in like an awkward filming spot. You're like on the back of my couch hanging out with me. In true bestie FaceTime style, until I get my actual like studio space built up. This is how we're gonna chit chat for a bit, okay? So that's why it looks a little different than usual. So our book opens, look at me with my little, I have all my notes. Our book opens with part 1, Gods That Answer After Dark. It's 2014 and we meet our perpetually 23-year-old Addie LaRue. She lives in New York City and she wakes up in bed with a musician named Toby. Now, his name doesn't really matter, but like I'm going to tell you this little vignette, and so I'm going to reference him, but he doesn't really come up again, okay? So she's been dating Toby for a couple of weeks, but every morning after they, sleep together and they hang out at night and they sleep in bed, when he wakes up, he doesn't recognize her. And this is part of her Faustian curse that she had, right? Nobody remembers her. If a door closes between her and somebody that she just met, they totally forget her existence. Or in this case, somebody that she knew last night, when they fall asleep, they don't recognize her. And so this is our first introduction to that. And even though this happens, she tries to leave impressions. So like I said, he's a musician. And so when he wakes up, he's a little bit too embarrassed to admit that he doesn't recognize her or that he doesn't remember her or anything. And so he tries to play it off, play it cool. And she just goes to his piano in his apartment and starts to play. And he's like, oh my God, that sounds so familiar. This is like really amazing. And it turns out that it's like a piece of music that they've been working on together every night over the last couple of weeks. But when he like inevitably forgets her, he feels that it's like music and songs and lyrics and stuff that comes to him in his dreams is how he remembers these types of interactions. It's kind of cool, but that's how she leaves her impressions. And we'll talk about it through the book, but that is ultimately how she kind of copes with this invisibility thing, is that she will date and hang out with and like repeatedly visit and have these like one night, quote unquote, one night relationships with these artists for like extended periods of time to influence their work and like leave an imprint on the world via being their inspiration for whatever their medium is. We'll have a lot of details as we go, but it's really cool. Like I thought that was so neat. And then we also get an example of her invisibility when she goes to a like boutique and she goes into the changing room to try something on. And when she comes out of the changing room, the clerk, or like store worker clearly doesn't recognize her and is like really, really shocked that somebody was in the dressing room and tries to play it off because, good customer service and stuff. And Addie's like, oh yeah, no, it just didn't fit. And then she just walks out of the boutique with these like brand new clothes. But by the time that the clerk will even go into the changing room and see these like old dirty clothes, they're not even going to remember seeing her walk out of the dressing room in the first place. They're just going to think some random thing happened. It's just so neat. Like, I love that so much. And so we're sitting here and you're thinking like, okay, so how did we get here, right? How did we end up with this curse? And so we start getting these flashbacks, and it all started in 1698 when Addie was 17 years old and she was living in the French countryside. Her father was a wood worker and he traveled to make sails. So he would travel to Le Mans, I think is what it's called, the city that he would go to. And when she's 7 years old, she tags along with him and she goes to this city and she sees all the merchants and all the people and all of this different way of life. And then when she comes back to her small little village out in the countryside, she realizes that there's more to life and she wants more to life. She wants to travel. She wants to see things. And this particular trip is like the beginning of this driving factor of her wanting more out of her life. And so at 12 years old, in addition to wanting more out of her life in a like physical, like geographical sense, she also starts to question her religion. Her parents are Catholic. She's questioning this, and there's a neighbor that they have named Estelle. She is like the witchy old lady who lives out in the woods that everybody's kind of like weary of. But Addie loves her, hangs out with her, really thinks that she's cool, and Estelle believes in the old gods, the ancient gods. And so she talks to her about this, and she finds it significantly more fascinating and relatable than she does Catholicism. And then at 16 years old, she is like actively praying to these ancient gods to help her avoid being married off. because, like I said, she wants more out of life. She doesn't want to just be some guy's wife. She doesn't want to get married off and have to have these kids and stay in this tiny little town. And again, like her entire identity being some guy's wife, some person's mom. Like she wants more than that. And as she's making these prayers and everything, Estelle continues to warn her of like, hey, look, praying to the ancient gods is great, but do not pray to the gods that answer after dark. Do not respond to them. Do not acknowledge them. Do not, like, the gods after dark are not things that you want to mess with. And then the other thing to note from this particular section is part of like her traveling with her dad and him being a woodworker is that he encourages her to also have a craft, and her craft is sketching. And so he always gets her sketchbooks and charcoal, and she's drawing all the time. And one thing that she's drawing constantly over and over again is the face of this man. And she's like obsessed with him. And she's like, this has to be my husband. Like, I love this guy so much, and draws him constantly and dreams of him and is like kind of almost like manifesting inadvertently this guy that she loves or wants to love and dreams of like running away with and like having this like bigger life with, right? And when we go into chapter 6, we go back to New York in 2014, and Addie steals a book from an outdoor like vendor guy, right? Like he has all of his books on the sidewalk in New York. And I just wanted to read you this little blurb about that particular interaction because I think it gives like a really good example of V.E. Schwab's writing, which I really enjoyed her writing. However, it was pretty repetitive. There was definitely a lot of parts in this book where I said, I think I'm having deja vu. I'm pretty sure I've read this before. And I'll talk about that and unpack that a little bit later of like me questioning if that was intentional. But, you know, it's just something to note. But in general, I really loved the writing. So she steals this book from this guy, obviously knowing that like he's not going to remember her anyway. But also it doesn't really matter because he's not paying attention. She knows that he is a widower who lives upstairs, knows that the books belong to his wife, Candace, knows that when she died, he packed up all of her books and brought them down to sell and is letting go of her in pieces, selling off his grief. Selling off his grief? Addie knows that he sits down here because he's afraid of dying in his apartment, of not being found, not being missed. A keel over out here, he says, at least someone will notice. And she's collected that piece by piece throughout the like 2 years that she's lived in New York and talked to this guy every day or every couple of days when she goes by this stand and like trades out what books she steals from him. She's kind of using it as like a library. And like every day at certain times will initiate conversations to him and gets this like more and more information. And like on this particular day, she knows that he likes blueberry like scones, I believe. She got him one and just like happened to drop it off. And it's a really cute way, I guess, to kind of like capture this like continuing interactions that she has with people, even though they don't know about them. And this particular one is like, this guy really has no impact on the story at all, but it also goes to show just kind of like how fleshed out these interactions are. And like, I would literally read a short story just about that guy. I find a lot of that so interesting. And again, the way that some of these like interactions and characters and everything, it feels so like there's so much depth and it feels so alive. And I really appreciated that about like everything in this book is like, even the stuff that, like I said, this guy doesn't come back up on the book, but it felt like a meaningful interaction. It didn't feel like filler. I don't know if there was a point in the book where I felt like something was filler. Maybe once or twice, maybe 1 or 2 relationships, but it was more because it was like a repetitive thing rather than like a not meaningful thing. Does that make sense? Like I got it the first time. I don't need to hear about another girlfriend or another boyfriend that Addie had. I got it, guys. But every time it still felt meaningful. Hopefully you understand what I'm saying. And the other thing to note about this book too is like it is constantly bouncing between 2014 and like the 1700s whenever we're like going back to when she first got this curse. Like literally every chapter it's flip-flopping. I'm not going to do that for sake of storytelling because it gets a little bit confusing, I think, to like be verbally talking about it. So for each part, I'll probably split it more of like the 1700 times and the 2014 times, or like only flip-flop those stories or shift timelines when I need to for the sake of like one storyline informing the other or something. So just know that I'm telling the story a little bit out of order, but not in a way that like impacts what you know. It just impacts the way that you would have read it if you read the book itself. Hope that makes sense. Sorry. It just makes more sense that way. So we jump back to 1714. She is 23 years old, and her parents in the village pressure her into a marriage. She has like weeks of dread building up to it. This guy is a widow with like 3 kids or something, and so everybody's like, this is your duty. It's your duty to marry this guy and help take care of these kids, and like you owe it to your village and you owe it to these people. And so for weeks, she has like prayed and prayed and prayed to like the Catholic people, the ancient like gods, the deities, like literally everybody and anything that she could possibly pray to. She is just trying to get out of this and nothing is working. And so on the day of her wedding, she runs away and she runs into the woods and she's going and going and going. And at some point she has nothing left. Part of the like praying to the ancient gods is that you give them a, not like a sacrifice, but like an offering. And so she was offering her like sketchbooks and her pens and like all of these other like little sentimental items of value that she's had over time and like things of value over time, and nothing was working. And so now in the middle of the woods in this torn up wedding dress, like bruised and bloodied from sprinting through the woods and through the trees and through everything, she falls to her knees and she has the one item left, and it is this little wooden ring that her father made her. And she takes it off of her hand and she throws it in the dirt and like buries it. And she's like, please, just like, I don't want to get married. Please help me. Please, 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 please. And as she's doing this, she's in the middle of the woods. And so she doesn't realize that the sun has set. And she is now praying to the gods who answer after dark. So a god does respond. And when he appears, he looks like all of the drawings and sketches that she has done. Identical to these sketches and to this guy that she has like dreamed of for years and years and years and has like always wanted and stuff. And immediately she can like sense the energy off of him. And he's like has this like smoky appearance, because even though he looks like the sketches, he still has this like smoky, shadowy, very clearly like made of darkness type of vibe to him. And she knows that it's bad, right? And she knows that he's like evil. Like Estelle has warned her again and again, but he's the only one who responded. And so she has no choice but to ask him to help her. And so he's like, well, what do you have me here for? Like, what do you want? And she says, I want to be free. And he's like, what the frick? What does that mean? And she's like, I don't want to belong to anybody. I just want to explore everything. Like, I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want this. And he's like, I don't really give a shit what you don't want. What do you want? And he's like, I don't know. I don't want to be bound to anybody. And I want to have enough time to explore and see everything that I want to see. And so he says, I'm not your genie, bound to your whim. He pushes off the tree. Nor am I some petty forest spirit content with granting favors for mortal trinkets. I am stronger than your god and older than your devil. I am the darkness between stars and the roots beneath the earth. I am promise and potential, and when it comes to playing games, I divine the rules. I set the pieces, and I choose when to play, and tonight, I say no. I'm sorry, hold on, we need to talk about that for a second. I am stronger than your god and older than your devil? I am the darkness between stars? Girl, this book really was made for me. What do you mean? Those are some banger quotes. There's so many times there's probably 7 or 8 quotes in here that like, not only did I highlight them, I like wrote them down in my planner. I made a special note about these. I love quotes like that, dude. So I said, oh, I'm invested. I'm like invested now. And so he doesn't want her ring. He's like, why would I give you eternity for a ring, a trinket? I'm not gonna let you live forever for a ring. And she's like, okay, well, how about you give me immortality, and at the end of it, when I'm tired of living and I've lived all the lives that I want, you can have my soul. So he says, I am intrigued. I think I like these terms. And so he agrees with it. And then he gives her like a kiss. This is her first kiss that she's ever had. Kisses her really, really hard and like bites her lip to make her bleed. And like that blood is like the sealing of the deal. She does not know what she has really done yet. But she does when she runs home, because she wakes up hours later and she expects there to be like chaos, right? She's not that far into the woods. She figured people would still be looking for her. The town bells should still be ringing. People should be out with their lanterns, like screaming her name and looking for her and everything, but there's nothing. It's just eerily silent in the village. So she goes home to apologize to her parents and to talk to them about what's going on, and they don't recognize her. They think that she's an intruder. And again, she's in this like torn up wedding dress, and she's all bloody and covered in mud and dirt and filth and looks terrible. And they're terrified. Like, they're scared of her and they don't know what she's doing. And so they end up kicking her out and just saying that they have no idea who she is. And they don't know why she's saying that she's their daughter. And so she freaks out and she's crying about this. And so she runs to Estelle's cottage and she's yelling for Estelle. And she opens up the door and she's like, "Who are you? Are you a spirit or are you a trickster?" She's like, I'm neither. And they have this back and forth, and then Estelle slams the door in her face. And then she's sobbing on the steps of Estelle's cottage. And Estelle opens up the door again and she says, "Who are you? Are you a spirit or are you a prankster?" She's crying and she's like, "I'm neither. I need help." And Estelle says, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Okay, like, let me go and get you something really quick." And so she shuts the door to go and collect something, go and get her like a blanket or water or whatever. And then she never comes outside again, because every time she closes the door, she forgets the interaction and she forgets Addie. Oh, my heart. My heart. And so she decides to go to her dad's workshop, and she ends up picking up this little carving of a bird, this little figurine, and she ends up dropping it. And when it drops, it breaks the wing. And she picks it back up and she's like so sad that she like broke this one little trinket of her father that she wanted to take with her. But all of a sudden the wing is fixed and it's like totally fine, and the little broken piece like is fixed. And so then she tries to pick up like a piece of charcoal and she wants to write him a note, but she could not break the figurine, but she could take it. Amid the growing list of negatives, she cannot write, because she was trying to like write this message, and every time she would get like 2 letters in, it would just disappear. She cannot write, cannot say her name, cannot leave a mark. This is the first thing that she has been able to do. She can steal. It will be a long time before she knows the contours of her curse. Longer still before she understands the shadow's sense of humor. Before he looks at her over a glass of wine and observes that a successful theft is an anonymous act, the absence of a mark. Which, again, is just like so good. And so she decides she's got nothing else. This village obviously isn't working. And that was the other thing too, of like, she can't say her name, like it gets caught in her throat. So people kept asking who she was, and she had to keep saying a different name because like Addie literally does not come out of her mouth. And so she ends up giving them fake names and stuff. And so she's like, well, I can't be in this village. I can't deal with seeing all of these people who've known me all my life not recognizing me. And so she decides to make a run for Le Mans, the town where her dad took her when she was 7. And so she runs through the forest like all night to get there. And she makes all these pit stops along the way. And she's hurt and her feet are aching and she can tell they're blistered and bleeding. And she has all these cuts. But when she stops at the river to kind of like rinse off and take a look at how hurt she is, she's healed. It all goes away. It's part of the immortality deal, right? She just gets like healed instantly. She can feel the pain initially, but then it'll go away. And we get like another example of this when in one of the towns along the way, she tries to steal an apple, or she tries to break into the stables and steal something, and she gets caught. And then she gets in a fight with this guy who like stabs her with a sword thing. And then he turns a corner and forgets that she's there. And then he's healed from his wounds that she had given to him. And then she's healed of the wounds he gave to her. And it's just like a mess. And everything's fine now. But she still has the memory of the attack. The darkness has granted her freedom from death. Darkness being like the god that had given her the wish. The darkness has granted her freedom from death, perhaps. But not from this. Not from suffering. It will be years before she learns the true meaning of that word. But in this moment, as she walks into the thickening dust, she is still relieved to be alive. A relief that flickers when she reaches the edge of the city. This is as far as Adeline, that's her full name, but Addie. This is as far as Addie has ever gone. And that's where our part 1 kind of ends with that POV. And so then when we go back to 2014, after this like interaction with the book vendor guy, That night comes around and she ends up in an apartment of an actor that she had met once and had gone on like a couple of dates with, and she knows that he's like out of town on doing work all the time. And so she ends up like able to go into his apartment and get past the door guy, knowing what floor he goes on and the code for everything, because she has watched him do this multiple times on the multiple dates that she went with this guy, and goes up there, and the door guy tries to stop her, and she knows that the second that the elevator closes, he'll forget her by the time he gets back to his desk to call like security, which is crazy. And so she ends up here and she's just like staying in this like random, really, really nice apartment. And eventually she ends up going to this museum and visiting it. And in the museum is a bunch of little bird figurines. She wishes she could touch the little bird, run her finger along its wing, the way that she always did, even though she knows it's not the one she lost, knows this one wasn't carved by her father's strong hands, but by a stranger. Still, it is there. It is real. It is, in some way, hers. A secret kept, a record made, the first mark she left upon the world, long before she knew the truth, that ideas are so much wilder than memories, that they long and look for ways of taking root. Okay. And part 1 ends with her going into a new bookstore. And she's talking about how, like, being in big cities like New York and Chicago and stuff, that you can spend years there exploring and going to all of these new places, and there's always something new. There's always something new popping up, and like years there, and you'll never see every inch of the city. And so on this particular day, she finds a brand new bookstore, and she goes in there and she's looking through everything. And there's a point where Addie wanders past a placard marked poetry, and the darkness whispers against her skin, teeth skimming like a blade along a bare shoulder. Come live with me and be my love. Addie's refrain, worn smooth with repetition. You do not know what love is. Okay, what an interesting little crumb to just leave us on as we end part 1. What also happens in this particular time is while she's in the store, she decides to steal a copy of a book. If you're curious, it's like a Greek edition of the Odyssey. And she takes it and she goes to walk out, and the bookstore guy, the bookseller guy, comes running after her, follows her like outside of the store, and she's like, oh, that's weird. I guess the door must not have shut. And he's like, hey, give me that back. And she's like, I didn't take it. I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, yes, you did. I saw you take it. And she's like, oh, sorry, it was just a misunderstanding. And then he looks at it and he's like, can you even read this? Yeah, I do. Don't worry about it. And then he says, okay. He's like, it's not like this would ever sell anyway. And obviously, like, there's something wrong with you. So just take it. And so she leaves. But she's like, that was a really, really weird interaction. Like, them looking at each other and the way his eyes, like, bore into hers was, like, really weird. And that's where we end part 1. And we go into part 2. Part 2 is called The Darkest Part of the Night, and each of these parts opens with a piece of art that she has inspired. So some of them, it's like sketches of her, or one is like a couple little blurb of Polaroids, a little collection of those birds, you know, some reference to a poem, all kinds of stuff. It's actually really, really cool. It's kind of a neat little way to tie everything together. And also in part 2, we open up with the first chapter being about Henry, the bookseller guy. That's the name of the bookseller who confronted her outside of the store for stealing the Odyssey. And he comes back into the store and he's just like shaking his head about like, I can't believe that this person would steal this thing. Like, this is so strange. And we learn that he is in his late 20s. He has a really, really tight-knit friend group. And that night he goes to a show. Like, all of his friends are artsy-fartsy people. Like, his one best friend that also works at the bookstore, like, she is some type of like art history major. And then they're friends with a bunch of like actors and stuff. And so they go to this play and then they go to an after party, and this girl ends up like hitting on him all night. How do I look? He asks, affecting a model's pout. And even though he's joking, the girl flashes him an earnest smile and says, perfect. A shiver rolls through him at the word, and he is somewhere else, a hand holding his in the dark, a thumb brushing his cheek, but he shakes it off. Interesting. So they're like about to do stuff and get freaky when she calls him perfect and says this, and her calling him perfect kind of triggers something in him, and he wants to feel lighter, to feel brighter, but the room darkens and he can feel a storm creeping in. He was 12 when the first one rolled through. He didn't see it coming. One day the skies were blue, and the next the clouds were low and dense, and the next the wind was up and it was pouring rain. It would be years before Henry learned to think of those dark times as storms, to believe that they would pass if he could simply hold on long enough. And I would just like to note now, I find Henry to be an incredibly deeply relatable character. I don't think I have felt so, like, intrinsically, like, oh my God, relatable to a character before. Like, it was freaking crazy. But anyway, we leave him and we go back to Addie. And after she ends up stealing this book, she goes on top of a rooftop and goes to read. And we just get more and more examples of these like type of temporary relationships that she has again and again. Because while she's up there, she runs into a girl named Sam who she has like had a relationship with for like months, and she's like hooked up with and slept over at her house and had all these conversations like again and again and again. And it's just this like deja vu where Sam always hits on her the same way when they first like get introduced, you know, invites her to her house. She has the same reaction every morning when she wakes up and doesn't know who Addie is, but compliments her and calls her gorgeous and makes her coffee and says how she wants to draw her because Sam does abstract art. And it's just like this really repetitive thing about Addie finding comfort in these people and how she can't have the love of the mornings, like the people remembering you and the comfort of those moments and like the peace that comes with knowing. And if she can't have the mornings, she can at least not be lonely at night. Oh, and so that's why she like continues to do this. Like she'll find like good people and then just kind of continue to hook up with them and, like I said, inspire artwork. And one of the biggest things about the art that she inspires, and the reason that you can kind of tell that it's the same person, and we'll get to that part a little bit later, is Addie has 7 freckles like on across her face, like a constellation. And it's like very, very uniquely placed, very, very apparent, like eye-catching that she has these freckles. And she has this, I think later it gets referred to as like a Renaissance face, like almost this like timeless beauty to her. And the most notable thing are these 7 freckles, okay? So she stays with Sam. Like I said, I kind of want to talk about all the 2014 stuff before I go into the 1700s and make this a little bit confusing. So the only other thing from this section that's happening in 2014 is Henry. So we get even more information about his dynamic and with like his siblings, where he doesn't feel close to them. And he has always had this like struggle his entire life about feeling too much. Like everything he's always felt more than anybody else does. He's always reacted harder and like been sadder for longer and cried harder and had all of these things that like always felt over the top and inappropriate. And he's just like always had these like crazy emotional swings that has been so difficult for him. And so he also feels like his siblings judge him and like he's not good enough for them. And he got like kicked out of his PhD program. He had a fiance that ended up dumping him. And I think we get more into this much later, but it gets talked about now. And this is where, again, I'm like, can we just like knock all of this out? Like, why are we dragging this backstory out across like 5 or 6 chapters throughout the next like 3 parts of the book? Just tell me now, dude. Or like, don't just like, I'd stop piecemealing it out in such a way that is like almost annoying. I understand, you know, kind of feeding breadcrumbs here, but it wasn't necessarily that. It just felt repetitive. It felt like you were repeating the exact same scene with a little bit more addition rather than giving me like a new example of something to give me a better perspective of what you've told me before. It's just like you're just repeating it again with more detail. I hope that differentiation makes sense to you, because it was like I would be fine with getting told something piecemealed if it was like little details that were different each time. But this, throughout the book, it just felt like little details that would get like, here's sentence 1 and 2, and then 5 chapters later, here's sentences 1, 2, and 3. Another 2 chapters, here's sentences 1, 2, 3, and 4. No, give me sentence 1 here, 2 later, 3 later, 4 later. Stop like repeating everything. Like I know what I've read so far. I hope I'm not making that more confusing, but it was just like, it was frustrating in that sense. So I'm just knocking it out of the way now for you because I don't want to drive you crazy. So Homeboy has this like, he's always been super, super emotional his entire life. It's always made him feel out of place. He's always felt like he was too much. He never felt like he was good enough for his family or his siblings. And he got kicked out of this PhD program, like I said. And he had a fiance at one point, or like he had a girlfriend of 2 years that he tried to propose to, and she turned him down. She was like, basically, you're a great guy. Love you so much. Like, that's so awesome. But you're just like, you're not enough. Whatever enough means. And this like kind of sent him spiraling. And that's where we're meeting him today, is like after this breakup and after all this stuff of him just not feeling enough, but also at the same time feeling too much. That says, They'll take my organs and they'll hang me from the bedpost, saying I was too soft for this world. And they'd be right, because quite frankly, to be alive, it shouldn't kill me every day the way that it does. I don't know what I did to have this fate. I'm drenched in it, and I can't even run from what I know. My special talent isn't writing, it's not singing, it's feeling everything that everyone alive feels every day, feels every day, feels every day. I think I'm special because I cut myself wide open, as if it's honorable to bleed, but I'm not lucky, and I know I wasn't chosen. The world keeps spinning on without me. It is so good. I love, it's The Great Impersonator by Halsey. It's like her 2024 album. Is that her most recent one, right? Like my number one album of the year, other than Sleep Token. So freaking good, dude. I love Halsey. God, I love that album so much. Sorry. And so anyway, it made me think of that, right? So all these like emotions and feelings and stuff. And so that's what he's up to, right? And so that's like the guy that we're introduced to. So anyway, let's time travel and let's go back to August of 1714. We're in Paris. She made it, right? She had this like terrible experience in Le Mans, and so she decides that she's going to continue on and she's going to go to Paris. Maybe in the big, big, big city, things will be better. But it's not. She doesn't have any money. She's a young woman all by herself. She can't get a room to stay in, and when she does finally have one to stay in, the woman forgets her and forgets that she paid for the entire rent up front, and so she gets kicked out, and now she has no money whatsoever. And she ends up at one point, she's going to a church. She's never been religious, not like her parents. She's always felt caught between the old gods and the new, but meeting the devil in the woods has got her thinking. For every shadow there must be light. Perhaps the darkness has an equal, and Addie could balance her wish. Estelle would sneer, but one god gave her nothing but a curse, so the woman cannot fault her for seeking a shelter from the other. So she goes to this church to try to find warmth and shelter and like help from the church. So the pastor, the priest, comes up to her. He opens his arms, but there is no welcome in the gesture. The priest is there to bar her away. He shakes his head at her arrival. I'm sorry, he says, coaxing her like a stray bird back up the aisle. There's no room here. We're full. And then she's back out on the steps of the church, the heavy grind and bolts sliding home. And somewhere in Addie's mind, Estelle begins to cackle. You see, she says in her rasping way, only new gods have locks. And that was another one where I like had to pause. Only new gods have locks? And so she ends up in this like really, really terrible situation where she has to go down to the docks and she has to like get into like sex work in order to make money, in order to get food or to do anything, because she can't steal anything yet because she's just not good at stealing. And she's like, again, this is like less than a month, I think. Maybe a couple of days, a couple of weeks at the very, very most after being cursed. She doesn't know what she's doing. And it's just rough. And so she gets into having to do this work, and it's very traumatizing for her, and it's not a good time in any stretch of the imagination. But she's doing what she has to do to survive. And she's sitting there and she's thinking like, this cannot be it. This cannot be the life that I traded everything for. This cannot be the future that erased the past. I gave up my entire life for this. And months go by. She ends up going into winter like this, of just living life, absolutely scraping by. And part 2, I don't know if I had said it earlier, is called The Darkest Part of the Night. And that is like what this is referencing, this like era of her trying to get used to living this curse. And so that winter, she ends up freezing to death in the streets of Paris. And she can't die though, because she's immortal. So instead she comes to like a couple hours later, and she's at the bottom of a cart of bodies, because at that time they would literally just go around and like throw all of the dead bodies on a cart to wheel them out of the city to prevent like disease and stuff. And so she wakes up in the middle of this, freaking out, obviously, understandably so, has to like dig her way out of these bodies. The people who were putting them on the cart start freaking out because they're like, oh my God, we just saw somebody like come alive, like a zombie basically, right? Before they knew what zombies really were. Is that true? the idea of like, I guess, reincarnation or like coming back from the dead, not like a zombie, the terminology, but I guess the idea of like coming back from the dead has been around forever, right? We're not getting into it. So they're all freaking out, and she makes a run for it, and she realizes that she lost the little bird, the little trinket that she had taken from her dad's office or from her dad's workshop that was like her one piece of home that she had kept. It had fallen out at some point, or maybe somebody had stolen it from her pockets when they found out that she was dead or whatever, and she just doesn't have it on her anymore. And for months, she will keep reaching for the bird, hand drifting to her pocket the way that it might a stubborn curl, a motion born of so much of habit. She cannot seem to remind her fingers that it is gone, cannot seem to remind her heart, which stutters a little every time she finds the pocket empty. But there, blooming amid the sorrow, is a terrible relief. Every moment since she has left, I think it's Vion maybe, I don't know how to say it, but her village, she has feared the loss of this last token. Now that it is gone, there is a guilty gladness tucked among the grief. This last brittle thread to her old life has broken, and Addie has been set well and truly and forcibly free. Which I also just thought was like a banger of a sentence. I thought these were all so good. And so a year later, like on the anniversary of her making this deal with the darkness, on July, I believe it's 29th of 1715, it's a year later, and she is in a hotel room with a guy. She drugs him so that she's able to, she like drugs him and like pushes him off the bed so that she's able to sleep in a warm bed by herself and not get like harassed. And the darkness appears, and she's pissed off at him. She's like, this is like, what is this? What is this deal? What is this life that you have given me? Like, what is even going on? You asked for an eternity, and I said no. You begged and pleaded, and then do you remember what you said? When he speaks again, his voice is still his voice, but she can hear her own echoing through it. You can have my life when I am done with it. You can have my soul when I don't want it anymore. So was it not in my best interest then to make your life unpleasant, to press you toward your inevitable surrender? Dang. That's so crazy. That's so crazy. Oh my God, it's so good. Okay. And then I did have this like one random highlight. I think this was in relation to the bird or something. And I have a note associated, so I want to read it to you, but it might sound a little out of sync. She wishes her clothes were as resistant to change as she appears to be, especially because she has only the one dress. There's no point collecting a wardrobe or anything else when you've got nowhere to put it. And then in parentheses, it says, she will try in later years to gather trinkets, hide them away like a magpie with its nest, but something will always conspire to steal them back. Like the wooden bird lost among the bodies in the cart, she cannot seem to hold on to much of anything for long. And so often throughout this book, there are these little parentheses that give this type of explanation of like, Addie will one day realize in years, in the future, blah, 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 Addie comes to the realization, blah, 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 or she'll do all of this stuff. And it's these really, really interesting glimpses into the future of these like lessons learned and experiences, while not taking away from our main two like timelines that we're given. We still get this history and this like filler of the time that passed between the timelines. And so you end up getting this like really rich experience instead of just like a now and then. We're fleshing it out without taking away from it. I hope that makes sense. So she tells the darkness she still wants to live. Yes, I've been through a lot. Yes, everything is going really hard, but I'm not giving you my soul yet. So he disappears. A year later, in 1716, he comes back. She again says no, that she has so much left to see. And there's a lot of like kind of bickering and back and forth between them about all of this stuff on each of these visits. But on the 5-year anniversary of the curse, she is at this like noble's house thing, like kind of castle-y thing. She's like snuck in here, and he appears and he like rings the bell to call the servants in there to like mess with her and get her kicked out. And before they do, he like casts kind of a spell on them, right? He's a little magic dude. Casts a spell on them. They all go in a trance, and he's like, come to dinner with me. Like, come downstairs and just come and eat with me. And he has all these servants like feed them and take care of them, and they get to have this like really like lavish dinner and kind of talk a little bit and hang out, and it's just like kind of date. And eventually she asks if he, like, what his name is, because she's always just referred to him as like darkness in her head. And he says that he doesn't have one. All things have names, she says. Names have purpose. Names have power. She tips her glass his way. You know that, or else you wouldn't have stolen mine. A smile tugs at the corner of his mouth, wolfish, amused. If it is true, he says, that names have power, then why would I hand you mine? Because I must call you something, to your face and in my head, and right now I only have curses. The darkness does not seem to care. Call me whatever you like, it makes no difference. What did you call the stranger in your journals, the man after whom you fashioned me? You fashioned yourself to mock me, and I would rather you take any other form. You see violence in my every gesture. Sorry, again, okay. You see violence in my every gesture. He muses, running a thumb over his glass. I fashioned myself to suit you, to put you at ease. Anger rises in her chest. You've ruined the one thing I still had. How sad that you only had dreams. What? Dude, the way that these guys talk, the way that her and this little darkness dude talk for this beginning part of this book, I loved it so much. I loved it so much. I was so, like, locked in, dude. I was so, like, oh, it's so good. It's so painfully good. And then it derails, and I'm so mad about it, but we'll get there. And so she ends up calling him, I think the name of, like, the artist, like, the picture that she drew, she wanted to call that guy, like, oh, I'm going to slaughter it, and y'all are going to get mad about it again, and it's been a minute, but, like, Lucien, right? Or, like, Lucian. And so she ends up wanting to just call him, like, Luc, which my little robot voice kept calling it Luke. And so I'm going to call him Luke just for ease of me not messing up this name forever. But she realizes that, like, Luc also kind of sounds like the beginning of, like, instead of, like, Lucian, it sounds like Lucifer. Oh, yikes, because he's kind of the devil. He's kind of darkness. Like, that's a little on the nose. So she decides that she's just going to call him what we're going to say, Luke. Luc, okay? Go with it. Don't get mad. I don't want to hear about it. So she gives him this name, and he disappears. And so on their 6-year anniversary, the very following year, she's realizing, like, okay, so he comes and visits every year. Last year we went on this date. Like, this year I want to look nice. She gets this little dress. She gets all prettied up. She ends up, like, stealing food for, like, an entire week, collecting all of this stuff so that she can have a dinner for him now. So that way it doesn't feel like she owes him. Like, she wants to have this as, like, a break-even thing between the two of them. And he doesn't show up. Just never shows up. And it's just toxic mind games between these two. We'll cut back to 2014. We'll end part 2 in the future. And we'll go back to what she's doing. So she goes back to the bookstore the following day or a couple days later or whatever to return the Odyssey. And so she goes in there to return it. And she's like, oh yeah, my friend got this for me, but I already had one. So I want to exchange it for something. And the guy at the counter, the bookseller, says, seriously? Yeah, my friend got it, and I have too many. I need to swap it. I saw that you just did an exchange for the person in front of me. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. And he says, you stole that book. What are you talking about? You really think I don't remember that? She says, what? And he says, I remember you. I know you took that book. I remember you. Oh my God. And so she's like, it has been 300 years. 300 years since anybody has ever remembered her. And again, they have this, like, eyes boring into each other moment. And they end up, like, planning to get coffee after he closes up the shop. There's, like, a little bit of, like, exchange between the two of them that leads to this that I don't have written down or highlighted or anything. But it was, like, enough of where both of them are, like, intrigued by the other. And so they decide that they're going to get coffee after work. And so she just sits outside the whole time, like, waiting for him and just thinking about how this can't be true. This is so unreal. Like, this has to be, like, a dream or made up or something. And when he's done with the shift and he comes back out, he's not going to remember her. Like, there's no way. But when they get coffee, he does remember her. And he really weirdly, in the middle of the coffee date, asks, like, what do you see when you look at me? She says, I see a kind face. I see somebody who looks really nice. I see a guy with a cute smile. And they end up like continuing the date all night, not wanting it to end. They like bounce from like, you know, the coffee shop to a diner, to a bar, to a little club to go dancing. Like literally just like don't want the date to end. And she doesn't really understand what his issue is. Like, I don't know why he wants to keep going on this date, but like I do. Like this is, I don't know what's happening here, but like I don't want it to end. And then eventually toward the end of it, she's like, hey, by the way, I lied about my name. My real name, like my name is Addie. And it comes out and she's able to finally say her name out loud. And then he says it back. And it's the first time that she has heard her name on anybody's lips other than Luke's. The first time someone has said her name or remembered her or anything in over 300 years. And it is amazing. And so finally they have to call it a night, right? Like they have to kind of part ways. And the other thing I do want to note that she's noting on this date is like as they go everywhere, the waitress is like way overly kind. There's a guy that bumps into Henry that then is like almost crying, apologetic for bumping into him. The bartender gives Henry a free shot. There's other people are just like going out of their way and like kind of like whispering and like very clearly staring at him. And she's like, is he like a celebrity or something? Like, this is really weird. I don't know what's happening. Like, I don't know why these people are acting this way. But she keeps getting distracted like from that train of thought by him saying her name and it just like sending her spiraling or whatever. And so they decide that they're going to meet up in a couple of days and go on a second date. And he walks home after the date and he is just like reflecting that he is so happy that when she looked at him, she saw kind eyes and that she saw his face. Okay, that's kind of interesting. And on that note, we end part 2 and we go into part 3, 300 years and 3 words. And then a similar thing for this part, I'm going to tell you all the stuff from the 1700s and then we're going to talk about everything in 2014 just for like ease here. So in 1724, it's 10 years after the curse and she has not seen Luke since the noble's house thing on the like 5-year anniversary. I thought I had it written down as the 6-year. Oh no, he didn't show up to the 6th year. So she hasn't seen him in 5 years. Okay. And so on that day, she decided that she's going to go and like have her own little picnic and celebrate and like, screw him. I'm just going to do my own thing. And so she's out sneaking around. And again, she's like a young woman in France. And so she decides that she's going to, or I think she's still in Paris specifically. She's, but anyway, doesn't matter. Young woman by herself. And so she dresses up as a boy and, you know, keeps her head down, keeps her hat low, you know, minding her own business. Ends up running into a guy on the street that knocks over the basket that she had in her hands and like breaks the like jar of honey that she had. And the guy, his name is Remy, realizes that he did this, apologizes, and then as he gets close to her to like help pick up these things that he knocked out of her hand, thinking she was a boy, gets close enough, realizes that she is in fact a woman and is fascinated. Tells all of his friends to go on and continue, and then he stays back and like talks to her and is like intrigued by her and that she would be doing this and like, why are you dressed up as a boy? Like, are you acting? Like, what does any of this mean? Like, what's going on here? And he's very, very kind. And so they go on this like little adventure together and he just like joins her for her celebration that she was doing that night. And he's just like so kind and so sweet. And they end up eating together and talking. And it comes up about him. He's in Paris to go to school and he left his small town so that he could learn more and do more and get out of this like little tiny place because it felt as if I would die there. Remy nods thoughtfully. Small places make for small lives and some people are fine with that. They like knowing where to put their feet. But if you only walk on other people's steps, you cannot make your own way. You cannot leave a mark. Addie's throat tightens. Do you think a life has any value if one doesn't leave some mark upon the world? Which is a crazy question that will shape the rest of her life after this moment. So they have this like big philosophical discussions. And eventually they end the night, and it's really, really cute. Their whole date, whatever, same kind of a similar vibe as like the 2014 time, where it's like they don't want it to end. So she ends up going back with him to where he's staying, and they end up having sex. And it is gentle and kind and fun, and it is everything that being intimate should be. And this is like the first time that she's like really had a great experience. This is the first time that she's done something like this that wasn't in exchange for money or food or comfort. Like, this was just bonding with somebody and having like intellectual conversations and fun and like, you know, doing something about it. And it's great. And they fall asleep together. When they wake up in the morning, he doesn't remember her, of course. She turns, hoping to meet his eyes, only to find him looking down, away, as he presses 3 coins into her hand, and everything goes cold. Payment. It will be many years before she can read Greek, many more before she hears the myth of Sisyphus. But when she does, she will nod in understanding, palms aching from the weight of pushing stones uphill, heart heavy from the weight of watching them roll down again. In this moment, there is no myth for company, only this beautiful boy with his back to her. Ah, oh, this is so sad. So this was like another like fundamental interaction where she like really, really bonded with this person just for it to like mean nothing and be nothing, and to just, it really kind of makes her spiral a little bit. And of course, like the second that she leaves, Luke appears and she tells him yet again, like, I'm happy. I don't want to go anywhere. Like, I'm going to keep living. So I'm not giving you my soul. I'm not surrendering. And he gets pissy and then disappears. In 1751, she's at a party, and it's like a little debutante type party. She's like worked her way into these like higher echelon things where she's like learned the right words to say to all these people to end up at these things. Luke appears in the middle of the party and tells everyone that she is a thief and a lie, and she escapes. And although like they're going to forget her when they turn, it's not like she can like leave, they'll forget, and she'll go back in the room, because I think you'll find my word won't fade as fast as yours, he shrugs. They will not remember you, of course, but ideas are so much wilder than memories, so much faster to take root. It will be 50 years before she realizes that he is right. Ideas are wilder than memories, and she can plant them too. So what that means is like, yeah, they won't remember her as a thief, but like if she goes back in that room, they're going to have like suspicion of people, right? They're going to have these like ideas and this kind of like almost like inherent bias in them about like young women being stuff. And they'll be like, I think I heard a rumor one time, and like that type of thing. So interesting. And so he just like completely ruined her night, because that's just like what Luke does. And in 1764, she goes home for the first time. Her father's workshop is abandoned, and she goes to her house and knocks on the door, and her mom answers. And it's just this like really sad thing where it's like, obviously her mom still doesn't remember her, and it's just, it's hard. And on that, we will now skip to 2014, where Addie and Henry are on their second date. It's finally rolled around and it's going great, right? Again, they're like bouncing around all these different things, doing a bunch of different stuff, until they end up at a movie theater and they're watching this movie, and he asks if she has seen it before. And she says, yeah, but I love it. Like, I love these movies. It's okay. But he gets like really weirdly angry that she has experienced this before. And then during the movie, he ends up getting up and like running out of the theater, and she chases him because she's like, hey, like, what is even happening to you right now? And he says, do you ever feel like you're running out of time? Addie blinks, and it is 300 years ago, and she's back on her knees on the forest floor, hands driving down into the mossy earth as the church bells ring behind her. I don't mean in that normal time flies way, Henry's saying. I mean feeling like it's surging by so fast, and you try to reach out and grab it. You try to hold on, but it just keeps rushing away. And every second there's a little less time and a little less air. And sometimes when I'm sitting still, I start to think about it. And when I think about it, I can't breathe. I have to get up and I have to move. Okay, so they end up leaving the movie. They go dancing. They're at a club. Same thing. They're having a good time. And they're like dancing in the rain. Henry with his head tipped back, his glasses fogged, gray, and sweat sliding down his cheeks like tears. For an instant, he looks impossibly, immeasurably sad, and she remembers the pain in his voice when he spoke of losing time. But then he looks at her and smiles, and it's gone. A trick of the light. And she wonders who and how and where he came from. Knows it is all too good to be true, but in this moment, she is simply glad that he is there. And so they go home, and they bone. And they don't fit together perfectly. He was not made for her in the way that Luke was. And I said, hold on, pause. Y'all and Luke end up banging? That's crazy. I'm excited. The way that her and Luke was. But this is better because he is real and kind and human and he remembers. Oh, my heart. My heart for this poor freaking woman. So they spend the night together. They wake up the following day. He's making her breakfast. They have a little chit chat. Everything's great. She's going to go and meet with him for lunch that afternoon. And it's going to be cool. But the whole time, as she eats, the hope is beginning to thin. Addie is not a fool. Whatever this is, she knows that it will not last. She has lived too long to think it chance, been cursed too long to think it fate. She has begun to wonder if it is a trap. And so when he leaves to go to work, she's like looking around his apartment because she's like, this has to be a trap. Like, this is too good to be true, right? Like, she's snooping, trying to figure out who in the hell this guy is. And she ends up opening up his nightstand, and there is in the top drawer, a handkerchief dotted with blood. When she picks it up, a ring tumbles out, a small diamond set in a platinum band. Addie stares down at the engagement ring and wonders who it was for, wonders who Henry was before he met her. What happened to put him in her path? Who are you? She whispers to the empty room. She wraps the ring in the stained kerchief and returns it to the spot, sliding the door shut. And so when they are on the date, and they're hanging out and everything's going great, he gets a phone call from his friends and they said, hey, are you coming to dinner still? You're running late. And he's like, oh, frick, yeah, we have to go to this. And so he invites Addie to come with him. You know, he's like, hey, I have to go to this, but like, I don't want this time with you to end. You should come and meet my friends and hang out and stuff. And she says yes, realizing and kind of accepting that this is going to be the beginning of the end. Because while he may remember her, there's no way that his friends will, right? And so as they're making their way across New York to go to his friend's house, he's getting her all caught up on who her friends are. So we talk about his, like, the first boy that he ever dated and how they, like, broke up a long time ago and they're still just friends, but there's, like, some tension and stuff. And his one best girlfriend is the one that worked at the bookstore with him and stuff that we've, like, briefly met before, and, you know, how close that they are. And then finally, he also mentions his ex-girlfriend and how nobody talks about her. She says, okay, cool, got it. So they go to this dinner party. And it's sweet and it's great and everything's super cool. And she's seeing the way that they all interact with each other. And there comes a moment where she's kind of off to the side of the room with Henry. And she says, hey, your ex-boyfriend still loves you. Henry deflates. I know, but I can't love him back. Can't. Not won't. Not shouldn't. Addie looks at Henry and meets him eye to eye. Is there anything else that you want to tell me? She doesn't know what she could expect him to say, what truth could possibly explain his enduring presence, but for a second, when he looks back at her, there is a brief and blinding sadness. She also notes, like, throughout the night, and part of the reason, too, that she's like, hey, he's still in love with you is because he's being a dick. Like, he's being so rude to Addie because he's very clearly, like, jealous of Addie and Henry being together and being on a date, and, like, he still wants Henry. And so the following morning, when Henry and Addie are still hanging out and they go to the shop to go and, like, pick up food for breakfast or whatever, they run into the guy, the ex-boyfriend, and he's like, oh, hey, who's this? To Addie. And Henry's like, hey, douchebag, why are you being weird about it? You literally just met her last night. Like, stop being a prick. And they almost start to get in a fight. And so Addie pulls him to the side and she says, hey, look, dude, like, I didn't want to have to tell you this, but, like, he really does not remember who I am. He's not being facetious, like, he's being serious. He doesn't know who I am because nobody remembers who I am. It's not his fault. And Henry's like, okay, what are you talking about? What are you even saying to me right now? And she says, my name is Addie LaRue. I was born in France in 1691. In the final chapter of part 3, she finishes telling Henry all about her life, lays it all out on the table, tells him about her growing up, her meeting and making this like deal with the darkness and how she's like lived forever. And he's like laughing at this and he's like, you made a deal. And she says, yeah, I did. I know it's crazy. It's crazy to believe. And he says, no, I do believe you. I believe everything that you just said to me. She's like, why? Nobody else ever has. Why would you believe me? Because I made one too. I kind of knew it, right? Like, I kind of knew. I was like, there has to be something wrong. Like, there's something definitely wrong for him to know who she is. He made one too. He made a deal too. Oh, this book is so good. Okay, hold on. We have to go into part 4. Part 4 is The Man Who Stayed Dry in the Rain. So we get even more background on Henry. And this is what I was telling you earlier. Of like, it's not until now that we get the like full breakdown about Henry and feeling too much and all that other stuff that I had said earlier. And so he ended up coping for a really, really long time with like drugs and alcohol and anything that he could like sip, smoke, or swallow to try and make all of this go away. After his girlfriend of 2 years rejects him and pretty much gives him this like confirmation of him not being good enough, he goes up to a rooftop. And this is where the like content warning about like wanting to end one's own life comes into play here, okay? He goes up to this rooftop to end his life. And I just have it noted here of like, it's literally 3 chapters about this deal, but we already had some explanations throughout. Like, it's just feels so repetitive. And so he tells her about this deal that he made, that he wanted people to love him. And that was all that he asked for. The stranger sits next to him and says, what do you want? Right now in this moment, I want to be happy. Ah, says the stranger, smoke sliding between his lips. No one can give you that. And Henry goes on and he says, I don't know what they want from me. I don't know who they want me to be. They tell you to be yourself, but they don't mean it. And I'm just tired. I'm tired of falling short. I'm tired of being... It's not that I'm alone. I don't mind alone, but it hurts. Look at me, Henry, says the stranger. You're perfect, the man says, stroking his cheek. Pain can be beautiful. It can transform. It can create. But I don't want to be in pain. You want to be loved. Yes, then be loved. And so they make the deal that for Henry to be loved, he will give his soul. And we'll unpack it a little bit more as we go, but it's just like so freaking... Ugh. Okay, that's all I can say. It's just like that type of noise. And so he's telling Addie about this deal and how he wanted people to love him, to see what they want. And Addie softens and takes his hand. That makes sense. And she's like, of course it does. Like, your deal and mine, they nest like Russian dolls together in a shell. I look at you and see exactly what I want. It's just that what I want has nothing to do with looks or charm or success. It would sound awful in another life, but what I want most, what I need, has nothing to do with you at all. What I want, what I always truly have wanted, is for somebody to remember me. That's why you can say my name. That's why you can go away and come back and still know who I am. That's why I can look at you and see you as you are. And it is enough. It will always be enough. Enough. The word unravels between them, opening at his throat, and it lets in so much air. Enough. Oh, it just makes me want to cry. And so then we do like another flashback to the day after he made the deal. And he wakes up and like everyone is being so nice to him. The barista that usually blows him off, she flirts with him and writes her number on the cup. Literally absolutely everybody he runs into, they're all like fawning over him. And he's noticing though that like whenever this happens, there's like a weird glossy film over their eyes. And they see him as what they want, right? As the best friend, the brother, the son, the grandkid, the whatever that they've like always like that they want to see when they look at him. It's just this like deep love for him of like whatever it is that they want or need or whatever most in that moment. But it's not him. And he eventually like visits his family. He feels that he has stepped into another version of his life, not ahead or behind, but sideways, One where his sister looks up to him and his brother doesn't look down, where his parents are proud and all the judgment has been sucked out of the air like smoke vented from a fire. He didn't realize how much connective tissue is made up of guilt. Oh, this is so good. This is such good writing. How much connective tissue is made up of guilt. Without the weight of it, he feels dizzy and light, euphoric. And so he tries to leave dinner, and he's like, oh, I have to get back. The shop opens at 10. They live like 2.5 hours away. You work so hard is a thing his mother has never said, a thing she apparently says now. His brother grips his shoulder and looks at him with those mercifully clouded eyes and says, I love you, Henry. I'm glad you're doing so well. His younger sister wraps her arms around his waist. Don't be such a stranger. His father follows him out to the car, and when Henry holds out his hand, his father pulls him in for a hug and says, I'm proud of you, son. And part of him wants to ask why. To bait, to test the limits of this spell, to press his father into faltering, but he can't bring himself to do it. He knows it's not real, not in the strictest sense, but he doesn't care. It still feels good. And so he goes home and he's hanging out with, I'm crying, and he goes home and he's hanging out with his friends. And the one chick friend that he has that works in the bookstore that like Addie has met a couple of times, who's the art history major, runs into her and he's just really sad. And she says, I wish you saw yourself the way I see you. What she sees is a good friend. And Henry has no excuse for not already being one. He puts his head in his hands and presses his palms against his eyes until he sees stars and wonders if he can fix this. Just this. If he can become the version of Henry that she sees. If it will make the frost in her eyes go away again. If she, at least, will see him clearly. I'm sorry, he whispers into the space between his knees and chest. He feels her run her fingers through his hair. For what? And what is he supposed to say? Henry lets out a shuddering breath and looks up. If you could have anything, what would you ask for? That depends. And so he thinks of lying, but he doesn't. And he says, I think I'd want to be loved. She looks at him then, eyes swirling with frost. And even through the mist, she looks suddenly immeasurably sad. You can't make people love you, Hen. If it's not a choice, it's not real. And Henry's mouth grows dry. The air, and it's like a New Year's Day when this is happening. Or not New Year's Day, New Year's Eve. And so the air fills with whistles and cheers and wishes, and she presses her lips against his, a moment of warmth against the cold. And just like that, the year is gone. The clock's reset. A 3 replaced by a 4, and Henry knows that he has made a terrible mistake. He has asked the wrong God for the wrong thing, and now he is enough because he is nothing. He is perfect because he isn't there. Oh, this is literally, this is so good. Just in case you were curious, by the way. I just have all these like highlights kind of in a row now. So just when Henry resigns himself to the parameters of the deal, he meets Addie, right? So that was on New Year's, and I think we're in like March or something now. I don't know where we are exactly. March or April, I believe. He resigns himself to this, and then he meets Addie, and for the first time he feels seen. And Henry thinks it must be a trick of the light, but she comes back the next day, and there it is again. The absence. Not just an absence either, but something in its place. A presence, a solid weight, the first steady pull he's felt in months. The strength of someone else's gravity. Another orbit. And when the girl looks at him, she doesn't see perfect. She sees someone who cares too much, who feels too much, who is lost and hungry and wasting inside his curse. She sees the truth, and he doesn't know how or why, only knows that he doesn't want it to end. Because for the first time in months, in years, in his whole life perhaps, Henry doesn't feel cursed. For the first time, he feels seen. It's so good. There's also some note too about like how not only is it with like his family that he has this like reactions and stuff too, but like even his ex-girlfriend, like the one that didn't do the proposal, and the ex-boyfriend that he has, they all come like running back to him, and he's realizing that whatever they see, like whatever they're seeing, it's not him. It never was, and it never will be. And he can't follow these passions that he has in like photography or doing anything anymore because like, would people actually judge it on the merit, or does his curse, kind of extend into that, and people would just say how great it is because it's him and not actually see his talent for what it is? Like, can you trust it? And so he ends up on a fire escape again with a bottle of whiskey, but this time it's for a different reason. It's so good. This is so sad. This is crazy. I've literally, so like obviously I read the book and then I kind of read it like a second time going through and doing notes. And then now I'm a third time going through this and I'm still like obsessed, dude. But anyway, enough flashback about Henry. Back in like current day 2014, when him and Addie are hanging out and he's like told her about his curse and they just decide to kind of roll with it, right? Like our curses, I was gonna say coalesce. They work together, right? Like we can see each other. We're here. Like, you ride this out. Let's hang out. So they go around, they end up going to this like museum and looking through a bunch of stuff. And she's like pointing out to him all of the art that she has had an impact on. Again, it's like all these random pieces that have her freckles or like somehow has her imprint that like he's able to like see her in these pieces of art. And his best girlfriend, who is the art history major, her like thesis is on this like elusive woman who has inspired people through the centuries, and how she's like keeping track of all of these different artworks and whatnot, and like trying to figure out who this woman is. And obviously it turns out it's Addie, and he kind of realizes this in this moment that it's Addie, and this woman that his friend has been obsessed with and talking about and doing all this research on, it's her in front of him now. And it's just crazy, and it's all this stuff connecting, and it's just this like really, really beautiful thing. And at the very end of this museum thing that they're at, they go to the very, very last room, and it's a room where there's a bunch of paint and you can like paint on the walls. And so he's watching as she's going and painting, and then it disappears after like a couple letters or whatever. And so he tells her, "Put your hand over mine," he says, and she hesitates only a moment before pressing her palm to the back of his hand, ghosting her fingers over his. "There," he says, "now we can draw." And it stays, staring back at them in that fearless shade of green. Something breaks inside of her then. She makes a second mark, and a third, and lets out a breathless laugh. And then her hand on his and his on the glass, Addie begins to draw. For the first time in 300 years, she draws birds and trees and draws a garden, draws a workshop, draws a city, draws a pair of eyes. The images spill out of her and through him and onto the wall with a clumsy, frenzied need. And then she is laughing, tears streaming down her cheeks, and he wants to wipe them away, but his hands are her hands, and she is drawing. And so this ends up translating to them going home and him eventually deciding that he's going to pick up a book. And he's going to write her story down. And so he writes her name, Addie LaRue, and it doesn't dissolve. It doesn't fade. It sits there, alone in the center of the page, and Henry looks up at her, waiting for her to go on, to dictate what comes next. And she looks down past him at the words, and Addie clears her throat. "This is how it starts," she says, and he begins to write. Part 5 is called The Shadow Who Smiled and the Girl Who Smiled Back. We are in 1764. It is the 50th anniversary, and she goes home. This is the first hot time that she's been home since the 10-year anniversary. She went and saw her mom. So she's back home. Her dad and Estelle are dead, and she remembers Estelle wanted to be buried under a tree. And so she goes and moves one and like buries it, like plants it on top of Estelle's grave. Later, Addie will be able to recall almost 300 years in perfect detail, every moment of every day preserved. But she is already losing the sound of her father's laugh. She cannot remember the exact color of her mother's eyes, cannot recall the set of Estelle's jaw. 50 years and she is still learning the shape of her curse. She cannot make a thing, but she can use it. She cannot break a thing, but she can steal it. She cannot start a fire, but she can keep it going. She does not know if it is some kind of mercy, or simply a crack in the mortar of her curse, one of the few fissures she has found in the walls of this new life. Perhaps Luke hasn't noticed, or perhaps he has put them there on purpose to draw her out, to make her hope. And she's talking about like being able to transplant the tree and have it grow over Estelle's grave. And so after she does this, she decides that she's going to go to Estelle's cabin, which is like semi-abandoned in the woods, and just kind of like reflect on life. And so Luke shows up and he like kind of comments about her like weird pilgrimage that she's making. She's like, yeah, whatever. And he's talking crap to her. She gets a little bit snarky. And so then he gives her this like crippling pain and like ages her body so badly and says, "You were so selfish, Addie, and because of you, she died alone." We all die alone. That's what Estelle would have said, at least, she thinks. She hopes. Once she would have been certain, but the confidence has faded with the memory of the woman's voice. And so she's just in this like horrific, pain on the floor of this, because he's like, maybe I've made it too easy for you to keep telling me no, to not give me your soul. Maybe you're just not suffering enough. So he puts her in all this pain and whatnot. And then she tells him to go to hell. He laughs and disappears. She collapses to the floor and all the pain goes away. She like passes out for a while though. And in 1789, like I said, we're going to do all the history first and then we'll come back to it. In 1789, Paris is on fire. It's chaos and she's about to be attacked. And Luke appears and saves her, grabs her, and teleports her to Florence, Italy. And Addie cannot help herself. She shakes her head, bemused. "Some nights you love to see me suffer, so that I will yield. Others you seem so intent to spare me from it. I do wish that you would make up your mind." A shadow sweeps across his face. "Trust me, my dear, you don't." A small shiver runs through her as he lifts a wine glass to his lips. "Do not mistake this, any of this, as kindness, Adeline." His eyes go bright with mischief. "I simply want to be the one that breaks you." Okay. And then if Luke meant to abandon her, stranding her here in Florence, in doing so he broke a kind of seal. In yet another maddening way, he forced her free. Until that moment, Addie had never even conceived of leaving France. It's absurd to think of it now, how the world felt so much smaller then. And then suddenly it was not. Perhaps he meant to cast her into chaos. Perhaps he thought she was getting too comfortable, growing too stubborn. Perhaps he wanted her to call for him again, to beg him to come back. Perhaps. But she will never know. And in 1806, a lover of hers draws her quickly with charcoal. And the sketch, like, they wake up together. And this artist is not shy about not knowing who she is. Dude does not care at all. And so he just gets up and says that she looks beautiful in this light and starts sketching her. And the sketch is like obscure enough that it doesn't disappear, but her 7 freckles are very, very notable. And this is like a piece of art that is featured at the beginning of one of the parts of the book. And it's one of the pieces that Henry's friend had for her thesis. And so Addie looks at this, realizes that this isn't disappearing, and then this is like really settling into her of like, this is how she can leave a mark on the world. She can inspire the artists. This is like when that ball finally like gets rolling for her. And so 21 years later, in 1827, she is at a gallery and there are 6 pieces that she has inspired or helped with, or like whatever you want to call it. And Luke appears. And it's not on their anniversary, though. He's always appeared on her anniversary. She thought that that was like part of the deal, that he always had to appear at that time. So it's kind of odd. And so she taunts him a little bit after he's talking crap to her, because that's all he ever does. And he's like, "Oh, like, look at you getting around the curse. I bet you think you're so creative." And she says, "Destroy it, and I'll make more." "It does not matter," he says, hand falling. "You do not matter, Adeline." The words bite even now. "Take your echoes and pretend they are a voice." Oh, that's so good. And so she says something snarky back. And she's like, "I know you're lonely. You just keep showing up here and talking to me. Like, you're invested. I know you're just lonely. You just want to hang out. Like, just say so. Why are you being so weird about it? Like, you're sure acting like a mortal right now." And so he says, "Oh, you think you know me?" Grabs her, teleports her to freaking Beethoven's like studio where he's playing piano to collect his soul. The black hair rises from his face, being Luke's face. He's no longer looking like her Luke. He's now looking like the monster that he is, right? Black hair rises from his face, climbing through the air like the weeds, and his skin ripples and splits. And what spills out is not man, it is a monster. It is a god. It is the night itself and something else, something she has never seen, something she cannot bear to look at, something older than the dark. Something older than the dark? That's crazy. And so he's there to collect Beethoven's soul. And so it's like this little bead of light that comes out of your chest, and this little marble. And so you can either give it willingly and it's not painful at all, or in this case, Beethoven did not want to. And so it was very, very violent and terrible. And so she witnesses this, witnesses Luke and all of his like monsterness. And then he like takes her home and drops her off and doesn't say anything, just like teleports her back to wherever she was before. And she's realizing that like she does know him. A couple of years later, on one of their anniversaries, he intercepts her on her way to Munich and teleports her there. They end up going on this kind of like fancy date to celebrate their anniversary, and they go to like an opera together, and she's loving it. It's so amazing and beautiful, and she's like so enthralled. And he's going on and telling her about all of these artists and how so many artists sell their souls to him because time is cruel to all and crueler to artists because vision weakens and voices wither and talent fades. He leans in close and twists a lock of her hair around one finger. Because happiness is brief and history is lasting. And in the end, he says, everyone wants to be remembered. The words are a knife cutting swift and deep. They're willing to trade the ability to do their art for a shorter life or to sell their souls for the legacy that their art produces and the impact that their art will have on the world. It's really kind of beautiful. It's just like really interesting, like reflective thing. And so he's like, yeah, I've impacted and helped out like Shakespeare and Beethoven and all these famous actors and all these playwrights and everybody, all these philosophers. Like, I'm the one that all of them have turned to and sold their souls to so they could be great. Which is crazy, dude. That's so freaking interesting. And so we cut even more forward for them, 1854, and it's on the anniversary of the curse again. And she returns yet again back home. So we're now like over 100, we're almost 200 years in the future. So we're 140 years later. She goes back home again to go and see Estelle's tree, and it has taken root and it's beautiful. And she's just noting how much everything has changed and how much the town has changed and all this other stuff. And Luke appears by her yet again, and he says, you know, are you ready? Are you done suffering? Are you going to give me your soul? Are you giving up yet? And she says, I'm not tired. I'm just waking up. And this pisses him off a lot. And so he ends up leaving. And so she ends up going to Estelle's cabin after this like discussion with him. And the next time she comes, there will be no trace. The remains swallowed by the advancing woods. But for now, there's still a skeleton slowly being buried by the moss. So good. Again, the little glimpse into like the between times of like the now and then. Another couple of years go by. We're in 1899. It's New Year's Eve, and she is alone out in the woods in this cabin, like hanging out by herself. And Luke appears, and he's like, hey, it's New Year's Eve. Let's go to Paris. Like, how about you come with me? Like, let's go teleport and go celebrate. And she's like, no, I just want some peace and quiet. And so he ends up like conjuring like the fire. He ends up conjuring like a bottle of wine and some glasses for them to like just kind of hang out. And we'll cut back to 2014. They wake up together and they're hanging out, her and Henry, right? Hanging out. All of the words that he wrote the night before are still there. The journals are still there. This documentation of her existing, of her life, are still there. And he ends up realizing that she has nowhere to go, that like she really has no place to stay, right? She can't rent out an apartment or something. And so he says, hey, how about you stay with me? Like at least for a little while, like stay for now. And before she can think of something, he's out of bed pulling open the bottom drawer, and he pushes the contents to one side, carving out space. You can put your stuff here. He looks at her, suddenly uncertain. Do you have things? She will explain, eventually, the details of the curse and the way that it twists and curls around her, but he doesn't know them yet. He doesn't need to. For him, her story has just started. There's no point in really having any more than you can hold when you have no place to put things down. Well, if you get things, if you want them, you can put them there. With that, he heads sleepily for the shower, and she stares at the space that he's made for her, and she wonders what would happen if she had things inside. Would they disappear immediately? Glow slowly, carelessly missing like socks stolen by a dryer? She's never been able to hang on to anything for long. Only the leather jacket and the wooden ring, and she's always known it was because Luke wanted her to have both, and bound them to her under the guise of gifts. She turns and studies the clothes flung over the chair. They are streaked with paint from the High Line, which was the bar that they had gone to, or the club that they danced at. There's green on her shirt, a purple smear on the knee of her jeans. Her boots, too, are flecked with yellow and blue. She knows the paint will fade, rinsed off by a puddle or simply wiped away by time, but that's how memories are supposed to work. there, and then a little by little gone. And she gets dressed in yesterday's outfit, takes up the leather jacket, and instead of shrugging it on, she folds it carefully and places it in the empty drawer. It sits there, surrounded by open space, waiting to be filled. Addie rounds the bed and nearly steps on the notebook. It lies open on the floor. It must have slipped off the bed during the night, and she lifts it gingerly, as if it's bound by ash and spider silk instead of paper and glue. She half expects it to crumble at her touch, but it holds, and when she chances to pull back the cover, she finds the first few pages filled. Addie takes another chance, runs her fingers lightly over the words, feels the indent of the pen, the years hidden behind each word. "This is how it starts," he wrote under her name. The first thing she still remembers is the ride to the market. Her father in the seat beside her, cart filled with his work. She holds her breath as she reads, the shower filling the room with a quiet hush. Her father tells her stories. She doesn't remember the words, but she remembers the way he said them. Addie perches there reading until she runs out of words, giving way to page after page of empty space waiting to be filled. When she hears Henry turn the water off, she forces herself to close the book and sets it gently, almost reverently, back on the bed. And so they spend all of this time just writing down her story. That's pretty much how they spend the next couple of days and whatnot. And as she's going through and like explaining it and explaining the parameters of the curse and people forgetting her, and Henry's going out in public with her and like seeing it firsthand of people just like forgetting her the second they turn around and stuff, he says, "I would have lost my mind." "Oh, I did," she says blithely. "But when you live long enough, even madness ends." Future Kaylee here. There's about to be a jump scare, so I just wanted to give you the disclaimer that you're about to get scared, because I got really scared. So I don't want to mess up your vibe. So I'm about to freak out, okay? Heads up. Oh my God, what a good sentence. I cannot get over some of the writing in this freaking book, dude. Oh my God, there's a stink bug on my phone. Sorry, did I just scare you? Oh my God, how did that get there? How long has that been there? Oh shit. Oh, I don't know what to do. I hate stink bugs. Please don't go, please don't go, please don't go, please don't go, please don't go. Can you see him crawling on my phone like a psychopath jerkwad? Okay, well, look at that, guys. You get all kinds of view of my living room now. That's where the culprit is. He's over there on my pile of moving clothes. Don't look at this. Don't judge me. He's over there. This little stink bug asshole. Killed my vibe. Now I'm stressed. It's like 8:55 p.m. at night. I gotta go to bed soon, and now I'm all worked up. I hate stink bugs. We have like so many in this house. I don't know what that's about. I don't know what to do about it. I'm really sad. Okay, where the hell was I? I was talking about how great I love the writing and how awesome it is. Yay. Okay. Yep, I did that. I did all of that, and then I said chapter 12. Her and Henry just go on dating, right? Just like taking notes of her life, doing all this stuff, kind of moving on, hanging out, vibing, whatever. On his birthday, they go to this like music venue to like see what's up, hang out, whatever. And Toby, the guy from chapter 1 that she helped inspire that song by, he goes up on stage and he begins to perform. And she loses her mind about this, because it's like seeing the art in real life. It's one thing to see the stuff that you've impacted and to see it in a museum or whatever, but she's like facing this head to head, face on, of like, this song was written about her and this guy is like looking her in the eye in the crowd and has no idea. And it's just really difficult. And so she ends up having to leave. And it was just this like weird kind of first time being faced with this. More months go by. Now we're in July. It's the 4th of July, and they are at his friend's house and they're watching fireworks up on the rooftop. And he's just sad. And she can just tell that he's sad and avoiding everybody and just acting kind of weird. And she knows that Henry's lying to her, or at least he's not telling her the truth. And maybe it's just one of his storms, she thinks. Maybe it is the summer heat. It is not, of course. And later she will know the truth. And she will wish that she had asked, wish that she had pressed, wish that she had known later. But tonight, he pulls her close, and tonight he kisses her deeply, hungrily, as if he can make her forget what she saw. And Addie lets him try to see his like sadness and him like staring off into the distance. I think again it was a case of like they're on the rooftop and he was standing on the edge, like looking at the ground, almost in a way that like made her concerned for his safety type of thing. And so he's trying to make her forget about seeing that. And so they have back and forth. She ends up talking more during her story that they're like recounting, and she talks about Luke. And so he asks, when was the last time that you saw him? And Addie falters. For an instant, she is in bed, black silk sheets twisted around her limbs, the New Orleans heat, oppressive even in the dark. But Luke is a cool weight wrapped around her limbs, his teeth skating along her shoulder as he whispers the word against her skin. Surrender. Addie swallows, pushes the memory down like bile in her throat. Almost 30 years ago, she says, as if she doesn't count the days, as if the anniversary isn't rushing up to meet them. And with that, we go into part 6. There's only 7 parts of the book, right? So we are nearing the end very quickly. So part 6 is called Do Not Pretend That This Is Love. It is July 29th in 2014. She hasn't seen Luke in 30 years like we learned about a little bit ago. And she is just afraid of seeing him on this day and afraid of him finding out about her and Henry and thinking that like he made this deal with Henry and like maybe he doesn't know about them knowing about each other and feel like they've like kind of pulled the wool over Luke's eyes. You know, that they're kind of like sneaking around and somehow like cracked the curse and that they have this like greatness together. And she's just scared for him to appear, to know about Luke or for Luke to know about Henry and whatnot. And so she doesn't want to do anything, but Henry talks her into going to the beach. They have a wonderful day. They're hanging out. Everything is like totally, totally awesome. He ends up telling her that he loves her on this day at the beach. And it's very, very cute and very, very wholesome. And oh, it's about to get crazy. But before we continue with 2014, I'm going to give you a flashback and we're going to talk a little bit more about how we got to this point. How did we get to the point of her and freaking Luke hooking up? And how did we get to the point of her and Luke not talking for 30 years, right? So in 1914, 200 years since the curse, she goes home yet again, and the tree that she planted on Estelle's grave is gone. It's just disappeared. And she is heartbroken. It's like a stump, like a blackened stump. And she's heartbroken about this, and she's sobbing and crying over the grave. And Luke appears, and he comforts her, and he says, I'm sorry. It's the first time she's ever heard those words in that silken voice. The only time they will ever sound honest. Did you do this? She whispers without looking up. And to her surprise, Luke kneels beside her on the sodden earth. His clothes do not seem to dampen. You cannot blame me for every loss. And so they go on to hang out. He says, hey, like, let's get away from here. Have a little bit of back and forth. And she's talking about how it's not fair that he can just like come and go whenever he pleases. And so he ends up giving her the wooden ring, the one that she offered to him when they made their deal 200 years ago. And he says, put it on and I will come. Luke leans back in his chair, the night breeze blowing those raven curls. There, he says, now we're even. We'll never be even, she says as she turns the ring over between finger and thumb and decides she will not use it. It is a challenge, a game parading as a gift, not a war so much as a wager, a battle of wills. For her to don the ring, to call on Luke, would be to fold, to admit defeat, to surrender, which is interesting. So cut to 1928. She's in Chicago at a bar. It's the Prohibition era. She's at one of those bars and she's hanging out, partying, having a great time, getting drunk, and like playing with the ring. No matter what she does with it, she throws it, she tries to get rid of it, she, leaves it behind, it will always reappear in her pocket. She's dancing and she's thinking about how it is like a game of chicken, about who will call on who first, because she hasn't seen him since he gave her the ring 14 years ago. They haven't talked to each other. He hasn't appeared, like none of that stuff. And it turns out, though, this is his bar. For funsies, he opens up all these speakeasies around town, and so technically she did go and approach him first, but he's the one that like made himself apparent to her, so they have this little bit of like kind of bickery, banter back and forth a little bit. And she makes some comments about being human and about wanting to just go and dance with them, and he says, you move among them like a ghost. He says, his forehead bowing against hers, because you are not one of them. You cannot live like them. You cannot love like them. You cannot belong with them. His mouth hovers over her own, his voice dropping to nothing but a breeze. You belong to me. There is a sound like thunder in the back of his throat. With me. It is like stepping out of sunlight. The humid room gone cold against her skin as he sits there in his velvet booth, and she goes through the motions of her night. And for the first time, she feels the space between the humans and herself and fears that he is right. In the end, she is the one to leave. And the next day, the speakeasy is boarded up and Luke is gone. And just like that, new lines are drawn. The piece is set. The battle started. She will not see him again until the war. He said, the war? It's in 1944. It's World War II. Because of the war, she ended up going back home to try to help out, and she is a part of the French resistance. She ends up getting caught by the Nazis and put in prison. And so she ends up having to put the ring back on to get saved. Again, it always magically appears in her pocket. So even though it got taken away, ended up back in her possession. She puts it on. He saves her, takes her away to America. And before she can say thank you, he disappears again. We cut to 1952 in Los Angeles, and she's on a date with a guy, flirting it up, having a good time, and Luke appears, interrupts the date, and says, all right, bye, I'm gonna take her now. So, sorry. So he interrupts her date. He sits down, takes the date's place. How long have you been with him? 2 months, it's not so bad, she says, sipping her drink. He falls for me every day and forgets you every night. The words bite, but not as deeply as they used to. At least he keeps me company. Those emerald eyes trail over her skin. So would I, he says, if you wanted it. A flush of warmth sweeps across her cheeks. He cannot know that she missed him. Thought of him the way she used to think of her stranger alone in bed at night. Thought of him every time she toyed with the ring at her throat and every time she didn't. Well, she says, finishing her drink, you've stripped me of my date. The very least you can do is try to fill the space. And just like that, the green in Luke's eyes is back, brighter. Come, he says, drawing her up from her chair. The night is young, and we can do far better. His eyes change colors. Of course they do. His eyes change colors depending on his mood. So, like, the bright green is usually indicative of, like, amusement or, I don't know, attraction or something. So, they're, like, dancing. They go to this place, and they're dancing, having a good time. And he says, even if everyone you met remembered, I would still know you the best. She searches his face. Do I know you? He bows his head over hers. You're the only one who does. Ugh. His voice, molded to the hollow places in her. What? Sorry, I don't know where this quote came from. His voice, molded to the hollow places in her as he says, I want you. And then again, I have always wanted you. Yes, yes. I love that. What do you mean? That's so hot. And so I also really, really like this. So we go into chapter 10 and it's like labeled, like a lot of these have the dates and like locations. And so it's 1952 to 1968. Everywhere, nowhere. It is only sex. At least it starts that way. He's a thing to be gotten out of her system. She's a novelty to be enjoyed. Addie half expects them to burn out in a single night, to waste whatever energy they've gathered in the years of spinning. But 2 months later, he comes to find her again, steps out of nothing and back into her life, and she thinks about how strange it is to see him against the reds and golds of autumn, the changing leaves, a charcoal scarf looped loose around his throat. It is weeks until his next visit, and then only days. Dine with me, Luke says as winter gives way to spring. Dance with me, he says, as a new year begins. Be with me, he says at last, as one decade slips into the next. And one night, Addie wakes in the dark to the soft pressure of his fingertips drawing patterns on her skin, and she is struck by the look in his eyes. No, not the look. The knowing. It is the first time that she has woken up in bed with someone who hasn't already forgotten her. The first time that she's heard her name again after the pause of sleep. The first time she hasn't felt alone. And something in her splinters. Addie does not hate him anymore. Has not for a long time. She does not know when the shift started, if it was a specific point in time, or, as Luke once warned her, the slow erosion of a coast. All she knows is that she is tired, and he is the place she wants to rest. And that somehow she is happy, but it is not love. When Addie feels herself forgetting, she presses her ear to his bare chest and listens for the drum of life, the drawing of breath, and hears only the woods at night, the quiet hush of summer. A reminder that he is a lie, and the face and his flesh are simply a disguise, that he is not human, and this is not love. So, with that knowledge, with all of that knowledge, I'm going to take you back to 2014 where we were, right? 30 years since she has seen him. This is like on the 300th anniversary. Henry took her out to the beach to go and hang out and celebrate, right? He says, hey, come home with me at least. Like, let's go take a nap. It's like midday, we'll take a nap and then you can leave, because she doesn't want to be around Henry when night comes, because she doesn't want Luke to appear and to see them. Which doesn't make sense, because she's known that Luke can appear whenever he wants. So, like, I don't know why she's acting like the anniversary is the only time that he can see them. I guess she's assuming since he hasn't come in 30 years that if he does, it would be on that day. So she's like, I want to be far away from you when nighttime comes, because I don't want to be, like, a part of any of this, right? I don't want him to know about us. They go and take a nap. They end up way oversleeping. It's nighttime. Of course, Luke is in the room and talks to them, and she's upset, and she's like, hey, like, leave us alone. Don't worry about it. Like, you can't pull us apart. Don't take this away from me. Blah, 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 blah. Luke says, you think I mean to pull you apart? Not at all. Time will do that soon enough. He looks to Henry. Tick tock. Tell me, are you still counting your life in days? Or have you begun to measure it in hours? Or does that only make it harder? Addie looks between them, reading the triumph green in Luke's eyes, the color bleeding out of Henry's face. She does not understand. Oh, Adeline. The name draws her back. Humans live such short lives, don't they? Some far shorter than others. Savor the time you have left and know that it was his choice. And then Luke disappears. And she turns to Henry and she says, hey, what the fuck? What is he talking about? And she realizes, like, of course she didn't give Henry forever. Luke would never be dumb enough to do that twice. He traded his soul for a time. The stink bug just hit the Pentagon. No, I'm kidding. It just hit the light up here, though. Okay, I'm going to move back over to my seat and hope it doesn't bother me again. Okay, so she realizes, okay, like, Luke's not that dumb. He would never give another human eternity like he gave me. Like, he would have learned his lesson. So she turns to Henry and she's like, how much time? And then at last, he tells her the truth. And then we cut to, like, the next chapter, and it's talking about him making that deal. And we get, like, a flashback to the year prior when they made the deal, which, again, is what I'm saying of, like, why are we doing this again? Why are we revisiting this again? It's literally the same exact stuff, dude. And so he's making this deal, and it's actually so sad. It will be easy to look back and wonder how he could have done it, how he could have given away so much for so little. But in the moment, Shu was already skimming the night. The simple truth is that he would have sold his soul for less, would have traded an entire life of this just for a day, an hour, a minute, a moment of peace. Just to numb the pain inside his chest, just to quiet the storm inside his head. He is so tired of hurting, so tired of being hurt. And that is why, when the stranger holds out his hand and offers to pull Henry back from the edge, there is no hesitation. He simply says, yes. Henry exchanges a year. He wants a year of being loved by everyone to give his soul away. And the year is almost up. There are only 35 days left. He only has 35 days left to live. And so she's mad. She's really upset about it. And so she runs outside and she calls on Luke, because she's like, I probably can't. I can't change Luke's mind, but I can try. I have to at least try to change this fate, because this isn't fair and this is crazy. And Luke says, I mean, I'm not going to entertain it, but you can try. You can try to convince me to let this guy keep his soul if you come on a date with me tomorrow. Spend the night with me tomorrow. Let us have a proper anniversary. Give me that, and I'll consider freeing Henry from his obligations. If, that is, you can persuade me. It is a lie, of course. It is a trap, but Addie has no other choice. I accept, she says, and the darkness smiles and then dissolves around her, and she stands on the sidewalk, alone, until her heart steadies. And she walks back into the bar, but Henry is gone. So she goes back to his apartment where he is, and he's, like, really upset, and he's crying, and she's like, why didn't you tell me? Like, what the fuck, dude? We had all these heart-to-hearts. Like, I've told you so much about my life. I told you all about my curse. Like, why didn't you tell me the truth? My uncle had cancer when I was still in college. It was terminal. The doctors gave him a few months and he told everyone. And do you know what they did? They couldn't handle it. They were so caught up in their grief, they mourned him before he was even dead. There's no way to unknow the fact that someone is dying. It eats away all the normal and leaves something wrong and rotten in its place. I'm sorry, Addie. I didn't want you to look at me that way. Oh, and so then he tells her about the days and stuff, and it's like so freaking sad. And so the next day comes, and she goes on this date with Luke. And she goes out into the hall. Like, he goes and he picks her up like a true gentleman. He picks her up from Henry's apartment, and he winks at Henry as he takes her away. This is such a freaking trap. And so they end up going. She's like, I have a couple ground rules for this. We're not leaving the city. You're not teleporting me. Like, I want to have a conversation and go back. Like, you're not gonna, because she's worried that he's gonna like take her across the world and like strand her somewhere, you know, so then she can't get back to him in time, is what the concern is. So she's like, you can't teleport me. We're not doing that. We're not leaving the city. And he says, okay, that's fine. We won't leave the city. Ah! And they go on this date. And he takes her to this really, really fancy French restaurant where it's like totally empty and he has everybody like under his spell to like treat them and whatnot. Or no, maybe they're not. Oh no, I think they are. Sorry. Because they go here and then they end up going to like a bar afterwards that he owns, that like he's not controlling those people. He's just like a good employer and pays them a lot type of thing. And he says, do you remember the opera in Munich? I remember everything, Luke. The way you looked at those players on that stage as if you'd never seen theater before. I'd never seen theater like that. The wonder in your eyes at the sight of something new. I knew I would never win. She wants to savor the words like a sip of good wine, but the grapes turn sour in her mouth. She does not trust him. And so she decides that like the only way to really get past this, the only way that she has any chance is to like flatter him. And so she says that she missed him. How many times did you almost put it on? Like the ring to summon him? How often did you think of me? She assumes he's baiting her until his voice softens to a whisper, the faintest roll of thunder in the air between them. Because I thought of you. Always. You didn't come. You didn't call. She looks down at their tangled hands. Tell me, Luke, she says, was any of it real? Was it real to you, Adeline, since my love counts for nothing? You are not capable of love. He scowls, his eyes flashing emerald. Because I'm not human? Because I do not wither and die? And then we cut to 1970 and we hear more about their relationship. Oh, this is so good. Okay, sorry. I'm so excited about this, dude. You literally have no idea. I am so excited. I conned you little fuckers. I made you think I didn't like this book. I loved it. Other than some of the pacing and, like I said, the repetitiveness, like it could have been tightened up. Like it was not as tight as it could have been, but it's so good otherwise. Kind of, maybe I'm lying. Maybe I'm gaslighting myself. We'll revisit. Hold on. Anyway, 1970 in New Orleans. Luke tells Addie that he loves her. And she says, do not pretend that this is love. And then he gives her a key to her own house. He like bought her a house so that she will have somewhere to stay and rest her head and nobody will ever evict her and she can just like have a place to put her things. And it is so sweet. So she gets this house from him. And he says, it's yours. It's a home. And she's so happy with it, right? And then we go back into 2014 and he takes her up to the bar that he owns. And it's like a super secret, really nice place. And they're hanging out. And he says, hey, if you want to save Henry, I need a mortal soul. Pick someone in this room whose soul you want me to take. And she picks somebody. And he says, oh, you have changed more than you think, my Adeline. Oh, and so they're hanging out and, you know, whatever. And she's sitting here and she's just thinking about like, what if he didn't say that word? If he didn't say that word, where would we be? Would this all feel different and be different? And you're sitting there thinking like, what word? What are we talking about? And he interrupts it all, right? And she's like, just if he hadn't ruined everything, right? And she's like thinking all this stuff. And then he interrupts her thoughts and says, the night is ours. Where shall we go? Home, she thinks. But she cannot say it. Back to New Orleans, 1984. they have a big fight because after they make love one day, he says, perhaps I could change the terms. I can make it better. All you have to do is surrender. The word is a cold shock, a curtain falling on a play. The lovely sets, the stagings, the trained actors all vanish behind the darkened cloth. Surrender. An order whispered in the dark, a warning given to a broken man, a demand made over and over for years until it stopped. How long ago did he stop asking? But of course she knows. It was when his method changed, when his temper toward her softened, and she is a fool. She's a fool for thinking it meant peace instead of war. Surrender. And so she's like, surrender? That's all this was to you? This was a game? Huh? Like, you don't love me. This house, the lovemaking, the spending time together and being inseparable and like talking and all of this, it was all fake. It was all a game. You don't love me. You don't love me. You're incapable of love. The hurt falls from his face and passes into a shadow, the effect as smooth as a cloud across the sun. A grim smile plays across his lips. And what a tiresome game it's been. To this day, Addie doesn't know how the fire started. If it was the candles she swept from the table, or the lamp she tore from the wall, or if it was the lights that Luke shattered, or simply a last act of spite. And so her house in New Orleans burned down after their fight. She lost the one piece of home that she had and lost this like ongoing relationship that she had and this knowing that she had with him. And then that was the last time that they had seen each other until now, until this night, until all this stuff with Henry. Cut back to current day in 2014. So they're like dancing on this rooftop and hanging out and talking. And he's just like, I'll give you what I want if you do one thing. What? Luke holds out his hand. Dance with me, he says. There's longing in his voice and loss, and she thinks perhaps it is the end of this, of them, a game finally played out, a war with no winners. And she's like, I don't know why you're doing this. I don't know why you're acting like you care. Like, you don't love me. You never loved me. Why are you being so dramatic right now? And he says, I lied. The word's a knife. You loved me, and I loved you. And yet, she says, you didn't come to find me until after I found someone else. You must have thought yourself so clever, he's saying now, star-crossed lovers brought together by chance. What are the odds that you would meet, that you both would be bound to me, both of you sold your souls for something only the other could provide, when the truth is so much easier than that? I put Henry in your path. I gave him to you, wrapped and ribboned like a gift. Why? Why would you do that? Because it's what you wanted. You were so set upon your need for love, you could not see beyond it. So I gave you this. I gave you him so you could see that love is not worth the space you held for it. The space you kept from me. But it was worth it. It is. It won't be when he's gone. This is cruel, Luke, even for you. No. Cruelty would be 10 years instead of 1. Cruelty would have been to let you live a lifetime with him and to have suffer more for losing. Oh my gosh. And so she says something about him wanting her. And he's like, what do you want? She's like, what do you want? Like, what is all of this about? What do you want? Want? He sneers. Want is for children. If this were want, I would have rid of you by now. I would have forgotten you centuries ago. He says, a bitter loathing in his voice. This is need. And need is painful but patient. Do you hear me, Adeline? I need you as you need me. I love you as you love me. She hears the pain in his voice. Perhaps that is why she wants to hurt him worse. He taught her well to find the weakness in the armor. But that's the thing, Luke. I don't love you at all. Luke's eyes burn a shade that she's never seen before, a venomous color, and for the first time in centuries, she is afraid. Does he mean so much to you? Go spend time with your human love. Bury him and mourn him and plant a tree over his grave. I will still be here, and so will you. Oh my gosh. So then he like grabs her and she teleports. Everything goes black. She comes to. She wakes up in the forest. City's gone. Everything's gone. Not really. She's in Central Park. So he technically didn't break his like promise to her, but he got really mad. So he broke part of it and teleported her, but she's still in the city. So she rushes to Henry's apartment and it's August 6th. She left the apartment on the 30th of July. Spend time with your love, he said, but Luke has taken it. He didn't just steal a night, he took an entire week. 7 precious days erased from her life and Henry's. And so, August of 2024 is the happiest month of Henry's life. They spend it all together. She doesn't leave his side. And a few days before the end, he asks like his girlfriend to watch the shop. He asks Robbie, his like ex-boyfriend, best friend guy, to take care of the cat, and tells him that he's going to go upstate and go and visit his parents, so he'll be on vacation for a little while, so that when he goes missing, like all of this stuff will already be in order. And he's just like preparing for his death. And he's just thinking, were the instants of joy worth the stretches of sorrow? And like a couple days before his final day, sometime in the middle of the night, he feels her get up, hears her padding down the hall, but it is late and he thinks nothing of it. He rolls over and goes back to sleep, and when he wakes again, it is dark and she's back in bed beside him. And on Henry's last day, September 4th, 2014, they spend time in bed together the whole day. And it's really, really sad and very, very like emotional. This is the last gift that she can give him. These moments he will never have. And this is the last gift he can give her, listening. And so she tells him all about her travels and everything. And he's not writing it down this time. He's just listening to her stories and like helping him get his mind off of this like inevitable doom that's coming. He has all this restless energy, the urgent need, and there isn't enough time. And he knows, of course, that there will never be. That time always ends a second before you're ready. That life is the minutes you want, -1. And so right before midnight, they go up to the rooftop where he had made the deal with Luke. And they go up there to wait. And he starts like kind of spiraling, and she can tell he's like no longer listening to the things that she's saying. But she says, hey, I need you to listen. You promised me that you would listen. You promised that you would write everything down. And he doesn't understand like what she's trying to like say to him. He's like, I did write everything down. I wrote down everything that you told me. And she says, Henry, I haven't told you how it ends. What? What does that mean? What do you mean you haven't told him how it ends? It turns out that whenever she had stepped out a couple of nights before, in the middle of the night, she had called upon Luke, saying that instead she would surrender her soul. You would surrender your soul? There's a shadow in his gaze when he says it, a hesitation in the words. Less want than worry, and she knows then that she has him. No, she says, but only because you don't want it. And before he can protest, she continues, you want me. Luke says nothing, but his eyes brighten. His interest is piqued. You were right, she says. I'm not one of them, not anymore, and I'm tired of losing. I'm tired of mourning everything I ever try to love. She reaches out to touch Luke's cheek. But I won't lose you, and you won't lose me, so yes. She looks straight into his eyes. Do this, and I will be yours, as long as you want me by your side. He seems to hold his breath, but she's the one who cannot breathe. The world tips, falters, threatening to fall, and then, at last, Luke smiles, his green eyes emerald with victory. I accept. She lets herself fold, bows her head against his chest in relief, and then his fingers come up beneath her chin, tipping her face to his, and kisses her the way he did the night they met. Swift and deep and hungry, and Addie feels his teeth skate across her bottom lip, the taste of copper blossom on her tongue. And she knows that it is done. And so she tells Henry, back up here on the thing, and she says, you've given me so much, Henry, but I need you to do one more thing. I need you to remember me. Life can feel very long sometimes, but in the end it goes very fast, and you better live a good life. And then she disappears. At midnight, she just like disappears into the shadows, and Henry's left standing there. She took his place. She sacrificed herself for him. She loves him. Okay, I have been yapping for so long that my mic died. Big yikes to that. So hopefully the audio is like okay enough to wrap this up, because we're literally going into the final part. And so part 7 is called I Remember You. And Henry wakes up and alone. He wakes up in his bed and everything feels like a dream until he reaches over and she's not in bed next to him. And so he rushes and he gets up and he goes over and he looks at all the journals, the like 5.5 journals that he filled out of all of her life story, and it's all still there. And so he like collapses crying, realizing that like the girl he loves is gone. And it's also important to kind of note that there was a point where like when he had said that he loved her, she said it back hoping that she meant it, because she always kind of questioned her love. Like if this was just out of convenience, like how is it only because they see each other, right? Like, is this a genuine feeling? Because she felt like she loved Luke, right? It was like such an intense thing that she's like, is this like a pretty healthy, semi-healthy, really nice relationship thing? Is this what love is? Or is this just like two desperate people clinging to the laughs, you know what I mean? To the life rafts basically around them. Is any of this real, right? And so she just kind of questions her love for him, but he obviously like loves her because it's more than just the curse. It's like him genuinely feeling truly, truly seen for the first time in his life. And so anyway, he loves her so much. He maintains his promise to her and he turns these journals into a book and he gets it published. And his best friend, the art history major, she's reading it and she's like upset because in the book it mentions like her meeting Addie and she's like, I don't remember that. And he says, yeah, no shit, that's the whole point. But also she's upset because there's no ending. And he wrote a dozen different endings for the book. Ones where Addie was happy, ones where she was not, and ones where she and Luke were madly in love, and ones where he clung to her like a dragon with its treasure. But those endings all belong to him and not to her. Those are his story and this is hers, and anything he wrote beyond those last shared seconds, that final kiss, would be fiction. The world is wide, and he's seen so little of it with his own eyes. He wants to travel, to take photos, listen to other people's stories, maybe make some of his own. After all, life seems pretty long sometimes, but he knows it will go fast, and he doesn't want to miss a moment. Because his curse is over now. Like now he's back to like having regular everybody. I think everybody's back to normal. They don't have the glossy eyes anymore. Like he's served his thing and had his wish and now he knows what to do to kind of cope with life a little bit better and to like, you know what I mean? That you can't wish people and force people to love you and whatnot. Cut to 2016. Addie is in London and she's in a bookstore and she comes across the book, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. And there is no author. Henry did not put his name or anything on it because he wanted it to be about her. It's her story, right? And so The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and the dedication in it just says, I remember you. And then it's her story. And as she's going through and reading this in the bookstore, Luke arrives and throws his arms around her shoulders. He sees the book and he says, they can have the story so long as I have you. And Addie reflects on what a terrible mistake Luke made in agreeing to her deal. Addie has had so many hellos, but that was the first and only time she ever got to say goodbye. That kiss like a piece of long-awaited punctuation, not the em-dash of an interrupted line or the ellipses of a quiet escape, but a period, a closed parenthesis, an end. An end. That is the thing about living in the present, and only the present. It is a run-on sentence, and Henry was a perfect pause in the story, a chance to catch her breath. She does not know if it was love or simply a reprieve, if contentment can compete with passion, if warmth will ever be as strong as heat. But it was a gift, not a game or a war, not a battle of wills, just a gift. Time and memory like lovers in a fable. And so she's reflecting on Luke and this deal that she made. He never learned to read her cunning or her cleverness, never learned to read the nuances of her actions, the subtle rhymes of her speech. And as she looks at him, she thinks of all the things her eyes would say, that he has made a grand mistake, that the devil is in the details and he has overlooked a crucial one, that semantics may seem small, but he taught her once that words were everything. And when she carved the terms of the New Deal, when she traded her soul for herself, she did not say forever, but as long as you want me by your side, and those are not the same at all. If her eyes could speak, they would laugh. They would say that he is a fickle god, and long before he loved her, he hated her. He drove her mad with her flawless memory. She became a student of his machinations, a scholar of his cruelty. She has had 300 years to study, and she will make a masterpiece of his regret. Perhaps it will take 20 years, perhaps it will take 100, but he is not capable of love, and she will prove it. She will ruin him, ruin his idea of them. She will break his heart, and he will come to hate her once again. She will drive him mad, drive him away, and then he will cast her off, and she will finally be free. Addie dreams of telling Luke these things just to see the shade it turns his eyes, the green of being bested, the green of forfeit and of losing. But if he's taught her anything, it's patience. So Addie says nothing of the new game, the new rules, the new battle that's begun. She only smiles, sets the book on its shelf, and follows him out into the dark. And I hate that ending. That makes me so mad. And this happened with the other V.E. Schwab book that I read. I read the Bury Our Bones in Midnight Soil, and it was the same thing where I was like, I had a lot more issues with that book, but I was a lot more into it until I got to the very end. And then I said, oh, I actually fucking hate this ending. And that's literally what just happened to me now, where I'm like, why did we end it that way? Why couldn't it? I'm not asking for like a happy ending, but I'm also not asking for like a shitty vindictive one either. Like, can we not have like a happy in between? I don't know. It was just weird. That's just such a weird, frustrating ending and stuff that just feels like, I don't know. I was just disappointed. I was disappointed with the way that their relationship ended. I was disappointed with a lot, but I also loved a lot of this book, and I loved the ideas presented in this book. And so I end this feeling, I don't know. I was so happy until the last, 2 chapters. I really wish that it would have ended without her chapter. I really wish it would have ended with Henry publishing the book and just saying that, he doesn't know how it ends. He doesn't know the end of her story. And not give me that bullshit with her and Luke. But then I would probably be complaining about not having an ending either. So who knows? There's no pleasing me. I don't know, man. It's just weird. It's all just weird. What'd you think? Did you like the book? Did you? I think that's all I have, guys. It's so freaking late. It's so late. This took so much longer than I thought. So I have to get running. But I would love to hear your comments in the comment section. I would love to read your comments, hear your thoughts, whatever, in the comment section. If you liked it, have you read it yourself? Is this something that you'd be interested in going and reading now? What's up? What's good? Okay. Anyway, bye. Love ya. See you in the next one.